Welcome to episode 385 of the AHRC Marathon Training Blog. MK here, and today we have a very special guest. When he's not running a marathon every single month during the year 2024, this 36-year-old husband and father of a corgi puts on his hero cape to help other marathoners achieve their goals, just like he helped our very own Haven finish her LA marathon in 3 hours, 29 minutes just this past March. And recently, on June 9th, at the Light at the End of the Tunnel Marathon in North Bend, Washington, he just broke 3 hours for the first time after a not so well-known marathon coach and run YouTuber predicted the outcome. Let's welcome Andrew Fair to the vlog. Hey, Andrew, thanks so much for taking time out of your busy schedule to come meet with us and share in your distance running and marathon journey.
Thanks, MK. It's great to get a chance to chat with you and a lot of your followers on YouTube.
Wow, one marathon per month, every single month during the year 2024. Now, how the heck did this come to be?
Yeah, no, it's a great question. I confess I probably didn't think it through, or at least some of the physical ramifications of running that distance that frequently. So I think back in 2023, ended up running 6 marathons, and so figured I would up the ante and see towards the end of 2023 after CIM, decided let's see what happens if we can try to double it up and get a marathon a month in. And so then sort of the journey began on figuring out, okay, how do we sort of plug and play with each calendar month and make sure we can accommodate work schedules and constraints around travel. And just started to pencil in different dates. And so worked backwards, knowing that sort of December is always going to be kind of a local CIM race. I had run a couple of other marathons in March in California, so Napa and LA. And then also wanted to get exposure to a couple of new courses and new cities that I'd never been to or states I'd never been to. And so findmymarathon.com is sort of the one-stop shop for me when it comes to figuring out what's going on in January, what's going on in February. And so I was able to find the Houston Marathon for January. In February, it was Surf City in Southern California, the aforementioned Napa and LA. So I doubled up on marathons in March. Then April, ended up traveling to Eugene for the first time being in Oregon. May was Ogden, Utah. June, as you mentioned, was in North Bend. And now we got, so we've cranked out 7 so far this year. We got 5 more on the docket. I think they'll all be in California, so
Nice.
Not as much travel going forward for the rest of the year, but we've got San Francisco on the horizon at the end of next month, Santa Rosa in August, then we got a little bit of a respite in September, and then we've got a Long Beach, hopefully with you, and Haven, and then Revel Big Bear in November, and then again, we'll round out the year with CIM, which is kind of becoming the annual tradition to end the year.
Wow, that sounds like a schedule with a bunch of great courses, a bunch of fun courses, some courses with some great scenery. That sounds amazing. Well, in order to run 12 marathons in 1 year, you have to be in pretty good shape. Your run fitness must be pretty good.
So I think I certainly took it conservatively to start the year. Since I started running in 2020, I think I've steadily gotten more and more comfortable with running anywhere from like 55 to 60 miles a week. And so always had, I think, I've had a pretty reasonable aerobic base for the past couple of years. But recognizing that running marathons is a slightly longer run than your normal Sunday long run. So I started the year kind of lower mileage than I otherwise would. So I was in the low 50s to start, and only kind of after a couple of months did I start to get back to what I would consider kind of my normal non-frequent marathon running cadence of closer to like 60 to 65 miles a week. But did it very gradually and just recognized that had to be a lot more conscious of what my body was telling me on some of these harder workouts from the Daniels running formula. And so I think what's been nice is just kind of the frequency of marathons has certainly, I think, contributed to becoming much more marathon fit than I was anticipating. I think the goal was there was never any time-based goals entering the year. It was mainly just the fun sort of challenge of can I navigate squeezing in 12 over the course of the calendar year. And then, if there were, 3:30 marathons or 3:20 marathons, like, it was sort of not the top priority. It was just finishing and having fun was always top of mind. But yeah, I think it's hard not to become fitter that once you're kind of in the thick of preparing both mentally and physically for kind of these race days over and over and over again throughout the course of a year.
Did I hear you right that you started running in 2020?
Yeah, so basically
only 4 years ago.
The pandemic was the catalyst to have to find some way to get outdoors. And so first time I ran on a road was mid-March of 2020. Yeah, and it was not a pleasant sight. Yeah, it was about 5
well, I can
minutes.
relate.
I can relate. Yeah, so it took a while to get comfortable, just figuring out how to run at easy paces and not just burn myself out, just going basically right to threshold from the jump. So yeah, it's been a long learning journey for the past 4 years.
So March of 2020, you're stuck in the pandemic, and then you start running and just crushing yourself and having a hard time. And then when were you ready to or fit enough to run your very first marathon after that?
So yeah, I took it pretty slow. So I started running in March of 2020 and then basically steadily worked up mileage from 25 miles a week to 35 miles a week. I think by the end of 2020, I was running 55 to 60 miles a week, but it was very sort of regimented. It was basically like 8 to 9 miles a day with no variation. So like I didn't know what a marathon distance entailed. I didn't know what a half marathon distance entailed. Didn't know about BQs or any of these sort of nuances that most marathoners are steeped in. And then when I turned 35 in 2022, so in June of 2022, it was like, okay, I'm 35. I've been watching enough sort of running YouTube to have heard about people running marathons. Having CIM in sort of my backyard, it was sort of the natural choice to then register for CIM for that December. And so the first marathon was December of 2022 at the California International Marathon.
Okay, so after almost 2 years of some base building and then maybe half a year of a little bit more serious training, what was the outcome? How did you do in that first marathon at CIM?
It was not a pretty sight. Yeah, I think it was probably the sort of seminal learning moment for me on basically everything that can go wrong will go wrong if you're unprepared for a marathon. And so while I was, by sort of just a crude metric of like how much your weekly mileage is, like I was probably in a reasonable range, but didn't do anything approximating sort of marathon pace runs. So it went out too fast, partly because it was a rainy, sort of cold, wet morning. And so by mile 16, I was on the struggle bus. And then it was, and as I think some people know, CIM is a rolling course, and so it'll punish you if you don't respect it. And yeah, so mile 16 blew up, and then the last 10 miles were quite a slog. So tried to learn as much from that one as possible, both in like shoe choice and fueling. So I should note my fueling choice at the time, I wasn't aware of electrolyte drinks or handhelds or gels. So I think my fueling choice was 3 Jolly Ranchers and a pack of sour Skittles.
Oh my goodness.
Yeah, not optimal in any way, shape, or form. And so yeah, it was I think ended up finishing at 3:39, which is a reasonable time, but very aggressive negative split. I think I went through the half at like 7:30 pace and then fell off and ended up finishing around an 8:20 per minute mile. So it was that back half will remain etched in my mind for how not to run a marathon. I think is one of the valuable lessons that I took away from that.
Wow, but that's still really impressive. At 3:39 for your very first marathon, only less than 2 years of running under your belt. Did you have any kind of other athletic background growing up or in the past?
So I bike rode starting in college. I had a road bike, and I used that to ride to and from classes. That continued in grad school, and then into my employment, where you basically get you've got a stipend for riding your bike to work. And so I guess bike riding anywhere from usually about like 8 to 10 miles a day. So there was some aerobic activity just to kind of maintain a degree of health, but running was not. I think running was always viewed as like, oh, that's going to damage your knees and your feet, and so try to do lower impact activities. And so I think a lot of the stereotypes colored my impression of what kinds of physical activities would be beneficial long term. And so, yeah, I bike rode basically from 2010 to 2019 or till 2020. And then come March, there was no longer a need to, March of 2020, there was no longer a need to bike ride to work. And so trying to find another outlet to get some aerobic activities in on a daily basis. So that was the catalyst for starting to experience what life is like as a runner.
Well, you definitely have a knack for distance running. And afterwards, during this kind of role that you are on and doing 6 marathons last year and attempting 12 marathons this year, and being really consistent with your marathon running and running times that seem to be of little or reasonable effort. I I remember very distinctly at the LA Marathon running with you and just chit-chatting the whole way and running at around 7:45 to 7:50 pace per mile. And just you were very at ease. You've developed a great deal of fitness over these very short 4 years. And by just simply, like you said, just racing events and just preparing to just complete these events. Did you ever get this kind of competitive urge to run a little bit faster or to kind of set a goal to break a certain milestone?
Yeah, I mean, I think that first marathon was a reminder that like the only way like marathons are going to be fun for me is like if I'm in good enough shape to actually like go the distance in a comfortable way. And so like I think I'm sure you've heard this as well, right? Like the marathon or the race day should be the celebration of all that training. And so like
Sure, right.
the training is going to be difficult. There's going to be those runs where you're struggling. But like I think that helped give me the confidence like on those days where like you're not having a great day or you're feeling ill or you're feeling under the weather or the weather may not conspire in your favor, to just know, like, to fall back and trust that like you had long run workouts or you've had sort of threshold workouts that you push through, and that then like makes you put a smile on your face in those miles where like the marathon, if nothing else, is like it can be emotional roller coaster. Like you could be feeling really well, really great a couple miles, and then suddenly the legs start barking at you. And so I just try to have fun with them, like whether they're going well or they're going poorly or somewhere in the middle these days. I really just try to take in, as many signs as possible, count as many dogs as I see, and say hi to them on the course. So just like finding ways to make sure that the experience, whether it's 3 hours or 4 hours, whatever the distance is, like that you're actually enjoying it and like making a memory of that Sunday. Yeah.
Well, this past marathon, it seems like you did a little bit more than enjoy the scenery. You ran a pretty quick one. Tell us about that.
Yeah, so I mean, I think as I mentioned, I came into the year with no time-based goals. My PR coming into the year was a 3:18 at CIM. And so like, again, great time. Maybe I could have run it faster, but that was breaking 3:20 was a nice sort of feather in the cap. And then I pivoted, I think, my training from Fitzinger's advanced marathoning to Daniel's running formula. I think I kind of just got bored with some of the training plans in Fitzinger's advanced marathoning. I was looking for kind of higher intensity and a little bit more structure in my training. And so Daniel's running formula is like almost like painstaking detail on like, and it's just like the mental focus from like, okay, 6 miles easy, 2 miles threshold, 2x3. And so like, I think it was a fun change up to kind of get me re-engaged entering these 12 marathons. And so even within a 6-week block between CIM and Houston, went from 3:18 down to 3:12. And so I was like, whoa, okay, this is kind of exciting. I'd never broken 3:15 before. And so the light bulb went off, like, let's see if we can build on those results going forward. And so the next 3 marathons were all under 3:15. So that was like an exciting, to me, it was like, okay, this isn't a fluke. Like I can now run pretty comfortably under 3:15. And then LA came up, and that was just like a fun run with you in Haven for the most part. I think we ran around a 3:25 or 3:26. And so then the next marathon, Eugene, at the end of April, was the first one where it was like, let's see if we can crack 3:10. And like that would be gravy, right? So it's like, okay, it would be almost a 10-minute PR if we could crack 3:10 within the span of a couple months from December. And sure enough, we were able to, I was able to crack 3:06 at Eugene,
Sweet.
which like exceeded all my expectations of like never thinking that I would. I'm sort of just a run of the mill kind of. Not even an athlete or like a hobby jogger, right? And so like those times were never even in my purview. It was just something that like serious runners would be able to do. And so the 3:06 then is like within striking distance of the BQ for my age group. And so started to comment on your videos about, the potential pathway to breaking 3:05. And so in May, so a 3-week turnaround from Eugene, decided to take a crack at a sub 3:05, and was on that pace for a little bit, but ended up falling off and running 3:06 again. So it was a little bit disappointing, but like had a blast in Ogden, and so didn't think much of it, and just basically turned my attention to the Tunnel Marathon in June. And at that point, it was like, for the first time, I think in my like marathon journey, did I actually feel confident in like I could run a sub 3:05. And so like body was feeling good, and wanted to like really just commit to trying to run like the happy state would be a 3:04:59. Like anything under 3:05 would have been like I qualified for Boston, which is something that I never even thought possible. I was basically, if you'd asked me last year, I was basically just going to hold out until I was 40 and like hope the 3:10 threshold remained intact, and I would be able to get in under that. And so I do a couple of kind of barometer workouts heading into a marathon. So like one of them is the week before a marathon, I'll do like a half marathon with 10 miles at marathon pace. And so the week before the Tunnel Marathon, ended up setting like my half marathon PR. So like a 1:27:50 or something based on 10 miles at marathon effort. And so like if I felt pretty comfortable at like 6:45 pace. And so but I didn't want to get greedy, because like I know that the last 5K in particular for me can be a real challenge and a real slog. And so went out pretty conservatively at the Tunnel Marathon. I think through the first 3 miles, I was in anywhere from like 7:15 to 7:30 pace, just trying to ease in, not do anything silly. And then by mile 5, I think I had caught up to the 3-hour pacer, which is never something that's happened to me before in a marathon. And so it's almost like an alarming thing at that point, where it's like, should I be here? Like this doesn't seem like a familiar area for me. You may be familiar with the tunnel course, but it's basically like a lot of varying degrees of packed gravel or kind of uneven terrain. And for me, it was a bit unnerving to not be able to see the ground in front of me, and just want to avoid a pratfall or a twisted ankle. And so I made the decision around mile 5.5 or mile 6 to just go in front of the 3-hour pace group and like create some separation so I could see in front of me for as much as possible throughout the race. And then just like settled into, it's crazy to say, like 6:45 pace for the next like 10 or so miles. And so coming through the half, I think was right around like 1:29-ish, which again, not something that happens to me in marathons. Certainly, like 1:31 is like had been the comfort zone, and so though again, is like the alarm bells are going off. Like this doesn't seem like this seems inadvisable, right? Like, am I going to blow up? And so I think it was just as you do with most long runs, right? Like take inventory, see like how do I feel? Like do the legs feel good? Do the hips feel good? Like breathing is okay, and like everything checked all the boxes. It was like, well, let's keep running at this like 6:40 to 6:45 pace, and then like mile 20 rolls around, and like we're well under. I think at mile 20 it came through around like 2:17, which again was not. These are not times I see typically. Certainly not in a marathon. And that was like the first time I think the thought crept in, like not only like am I in 3:05, like sub 3:05 shape, but like it seems like I'm substantially under that. And
Mm,
so I immediately like extinguished the thought of like even entertaining the sub 3 hour. It was just basically like, don't get greedy. Start thinking about like the mental math of you can hold 7 minute pace and like still come in under 305. So like just trying to disabuse myself of any notion that I may be able to do something that wasn't even in the cards. And so just kept like the fatigue that normally sets in around that point, like just wasn't coming. Like, so it was just like
mm,
taking 1 mile at a time. And I think this is something I learned from you in LA, like just enjoy that mile. Like think about,
mm,
who you're running it for, or why you're enjoying that scenery or that piece of nature. And so it was like just mile after mile from 21 to 23, just like was still clipping off like 645s and sub 645s. And the last 5K, like I again took inventory and basically was feeling really good, and then just treated
uh,
it like one of the threshold workouts out of Daniel's running formula. So like 24,
mm,
25, and 26. Just decided to cut down into the 630s because it was bizarrely just felt really, really good. And then sure enough, like you see the finish line at tunnel and you get a chance, maybe like 200, 300 meters to sprint. And all I could see vaguely in the distance, like a 2, a 5, and then a blur of numbers. And so I was like, this is, let's just give it everything we have in that last sprint. And so crossing the finish line, it was not only well under 305 pace, but it was under 3 hours. I think it was ended up being a 256 and change, like 256 high. And was just kind of in disbelief at that point. It's I see the sort of YouTube videos that you cataloged for Evan and Cole's journey, and so I was like, I don't belong in this company. And so I think I texted you maybe 10 minutes after I crossed the finish line because, as you noted, right, you in a YouTube video on Alvin's sub 3 journey. Kind of gave me the nudge or the encouragement to say, sub 3 hours is on the horizon for you. And I appreciated the encouragement at the time, but certainly didn't think it would come within the span of a week or so later. So yeah, thanks for all the positive vibes you sent to me that week of the tunnel marathon earlier this month.
wow, well executed, well run, well prepared for. Speaking of preparation, it seems like your 306 was kind of a pivotal milestone in your marathon journey. What do you think were the key changes in your training that you made? You mentioned making the switch from Singer to Daniels as far as marathon training plans. But what do you think was like the key element in your training that kind of elevated your marathon game to making that big jump up to getting down to 306?
Yeah, I mean, I think if I would try to sort of isolate like a singular change in the training, it was doing a lot more mileage at faster than marathon pace.
Mm,
So a lot more threshold work than I'd ever done before. So I think probably didn't fully understand how to adhere to the Fitzinger kind of workouts, and I think partly that framework, it was just probably a little bit too much intensity for me. And so shifting to the Daniels formula, where it's just like it's 2 quality sessions a week and then 5 days of easy running, allowed me to
mm,
really kind of put the sort of the pedal to the floor on those like Wednesday workouts and the Sunday long runs. And so whereas in the past I was probably running at or maybe just below or maybe just above like what I perceived to be like my marathon pace, heading into this year just started to do a lot more 15, 20 seconds faster than kind of goal marathon pace. And so like that's uncomfortable in training, but it feels a lot less stressful on the body than heading into a marathon where it's like, okay, I can feel much more comfortable at 315 pace or 310 pace because I've run 650s or 645s or 640s every week leading up to this several times. And so that to me, I think was like the big change to just kind of get over the barrier of starting to run comfortably in like sub 7 minute territory, which it just really didn't do for the past couple of years.
Did that come along with an increase in weekly mileage, or were you maintaining a consistent weekly mileage when you're running in the 315s versus in the 305 range?
Yeah, no. So I basically I've been running between 55 and 60 miles now for a little over 4 years. So the
Mm.
mileage has been, I mean, there will be some times where I've upped it to maybe the mid 60s or high 60s. But over the trajectory of a year, it would be pretty consistent, like 55 to 60. I think that's kind of the sweet spot. Running less than that is it, like certainly during tapers, I would take my foot off the pedal a little bit. I've dabbled in the sort of territory that you and Cole and Evan do with like the low 70s, and I think that's just a bridge too far, at least at this point, for where my fitness is at. So yeah, didn't really tinker too much with the weekly mileage. It was really just the intensity that got ramped up, and even that was, we stopped. I basically stopped at kind of threshold mileage, so didn't do any kind of 5K or mile repeats. It was just like long tempos at threshold effort for the most part, and like that I think just helped really instill a lot more confidence in me heading into frequent marathons where I was looking to kind of PR or enter these sort of uncharted territory.
In such a short span of time, you were able to just kind of build this base fitness that allows you to, like you say, enjoy marathon races, to connect with the moment, to be present and be able to really experience and tuck away those races as positive memories. What is your best advice to give to all of those struggling runners out there in the All Heart community who watch because they want to be inspired and they're trying to get to the level that you've reached? I think that um, uh, you're not breaking any records, but I feel like you've succeeded because you found in your life a way to make distance running so enjoyable, and you've set goals for yourself that you're achieving. What is your best advice for all of those people out there who are watching us and seeking some inspiration?
No, it's a great question. So, like, I think you can't always sugarcoat training, right? So, like, there are going to be
Mm,
days where it's raining and it's cold in Sacramento, and your body is just not feeling what it needs, how it needs to feel, or how you want it to feel. And so, like, I think the first step for me is like, what do I need to like make sure that I'm going to enjoy, or like create the conditions where I'll enjoy that run. And so like having shoes that I'm excited to wear is like the first step on that journey. And so having a shoe rotation where you're excited to put them on. They could be like the special, even if it's like, if you're struggling to want to get out in a day, and like maybe it's putting on your carbon plated shoes for a run instead
Mm,
of like your daily
right.
trainers for me. And I think certainly for like races when they're tough or workouts when they're tough, my old mindset, like the CIM, my first CIM, was just got in a really negative headspace. So it was
Mm,
at mile 16, like the only thought that came to mind was like, oh my gosh, I have to run 10 more miles. Oh my gosh, I have to run 9 more miles. And like that's not like it's just kind of throwing yourself a pity party. And I think more recently, and maybe it's kind of it sounds kind of silly, but like just like altering the way I think about those miles. Like now in those tough workouts where I still have like a 2 mile threshold repeat, or the last 5K of a marathon where I'm struggling, like just telling myself like I get to run 5 more K in this
mm,
celebratory, in this
right.
environment. Like people are cheering for me to finish, and encouraging me and putting up funny signs. And so I think just like altering my perspective on it's a daunting distance, and so people will grapple with it in different ways. I think the nice thing, I got to watch how you kind of motivated Haven, like after the half marathon in LA, like each mile you kind of helped compartmentalize that for her, and say like, run this mile for, Cole, or run this mile for Haven, run this mile for yourself. Like that's a great, I think, motivation. And so whatever gets you excited to keep kind of turning the doorknob, so to speak, and like getting
Mm,
out the door, or getting through that next mile, and like having a positive outlook about it. Like I never really like wanted to feel like it was a burden, or like I was doing something that I didn't enjoy. And so
mm,
running at core should be like challenging at times, but like for me, it's a fun activity I get to do to start my day every morning. And like wouldn't
mm.
have it any other way at this point after having now done it for 4 years. But for me, it's like trying to find that reason for why you enjoy getting out the door. And just for like partly, I think you run at 5 a.m. as well. And so, or thereabouts. And like the city hasn't woken up yet. So like you get to enjoy a large metropolitan city in my case, with like occasionally some cars on the road, but like just, crisp air, like empty roads. And like it's hard to beat starting your day when you can just have a smile on your face, just logging miles. So like, it's not easy to start, but like just building that habit and knowing that consistency and just kind of that perseverance, like you begin to see those gains and they become self-reinforcing, right? So like the first couple of months of running can be quite challenging, but once you get more comfortable with sort of routes or your shoe rotation or kind of what you feel comfortable doing, whether it could be 1 mile, 3 miles, 5 miles, 8 miles, whatever it is, and just like steadily building that sort of comfort with that distance and finding whatever it is that makes you happy and want to get out the door, like just try to cultivate those thoughts and feelings each morning, and hopefully they just become self-sustaining. I think that's kind of how it worked out for me.
Wow. There's so much truth to what you're saying, and I love how you approach the positivity. There's definitely a benefit to having this big goal out in the distance and having great vision, but the way that you compartmentalize and you connect with the here and now and just trying to get out the door and then trying to appreciate the moments and learning how to appreciate the process, and I think that's so invaluable, and I think it's something that everybody can take away and apply to their own marathon journey and reap a lot of benefit from. Hey, Andrew, I think that you are not big on social media, but I think people can follow your antics on Strava and your running journey, as well as the races. They can find you at Andrew Fair, based out of Sacramento, right?
Yep, that's right.
Awesome. Hey, thanks so much, Andrew, for sharing your story about how you patiently chipped away at your marathon time and how it all came together in such a fantastic way in North Bend. And thank you all for making it all the way to the end of this interview. Please like this video so that it gets out to as many people in the run community as possible. Subscribe if you haven't done so already. It helps out our channel a ton. And you can follow me on Strava at MK@AHRC. And check us out on Instagram at AHRC for your daily dose of running motivation. I am really late for a cheeseburger and fries date with my Cole, Haven, and Evan. I can't wait for that. We hope you have a great day and a meaningful run. We'll see you in the next one. All right. Bye now. But you got through that and then learned about, how important or how real the training is and consistency. Like everything that everybody doesn't want to hear. Everybody wants like the magic bullet, and
that's what I appreciate about your YouTube. It's like you're not selling like quick fixes or like silver. Like you just basically have to show up every day and put in the work. And it's not glamorous at times, right? Like
right. And you did it. Like it's so normal, and it's not anything breakthrough. But I think it's so special because so many people can't. And I think we just need more examples of, look, it works, look, it's not that bad,